A couple days, 3 to be exact, before the rockets had fallen outside of Damascus, a team of Syrian specialists came together in the suburb of Adra for a routine task of filling warheads with fatal chemicals that would kill the Syrian rebels. U.S. analysts said that the preparations lasted from August 18, 2013 to just after August 21, 2013, which is when the weapons were loaded into rocket launchers behind the government's defensive lines. Around 2:30 a.m., 6 densely populated neighborhoods were awoken to an array of explosions that were followed by a thick blanket of suffocating poisonous gases. In this attack, 1,500 people were killed, including 426 children. The Syrian government that planned this attack has no appreciation for the lives of the citizens or civilians of Syria. They were willing to gas half a dozen densely populated towns with the complete knowledge that they were killing 1,500 Syrian people, including hundreds of innocent kids. The right to life is the right to live our lives the way we please. It is the right to live in safety. It is the right to live in freedom. The right to life in Syria is completely disregarded. It is like an insignificant fly that is just simply ignored because it is easier to not have to deal with it. The people of Syria have risen up and started to rebel against the Syrian government because of the rights that have been stolen from them. In return, the civilians of Syria live in danger of attacks arranged by their own government. They live with chances of arbitrary arrests, government usage of unlawful weapons, executions set up by the government or pro-government sources, and many more. Syria has never had good human rights policies. The citizens live and always have lived in constant fear and danger of attacks, arrests, and executions. In Syria, tragic stories such as the gas attacks happen all too often because of the government's lack of concern and worry for their citizens. Filling the warheads with deadly chemicals was what U.S. officials say had become routine in the third year of the country's civil war. The government may be putting their citizens in their place, but is that really worth risking the lives of innocent people with the use of unlawful gases? There are too many costs for these gas attacks to be considered just. 1,500 people were killed in just one of these deadly attacks. Even if you would take the gas attacks out of the picture, Syria is still not any closer to achieving the right to life. There are arbitrary arrests, there are executions by the government, torture and death while in custody, and so many more. Syria still has quite a ways to go and quite a few things that need to be stopped, and a government that needs to make many improvements in order for the right to life to finally be prominent in the country. The lack of human rights in Syria have been a problem for much too long now. It has been a huge concern for independent organizations such as the Human Rights Watch, who previously referred to Syria's record as among the worst in the world. The Syrian authorities are accused of arresting democracy and human rights activists, suppressing information on websites, imprisoning bloggers and other journalists, and inflicting travel restrictions. Arbitrary arrests, detentions, and disappearances are extensive. On top of that, the Syrian constitution promises equal rights for both genders, but there is a very obvious, clear divide between the two genders. There is much discrimination against women. Their constitution also grants leniency for honor killings. In August of 2013, the government was thought to be using chemical weapons against its citizens. Of this, John Kerry said, "Make no mistake, President Obama believes there must be accountability for those who would use the world's most heinous weapon against the world's most vulnerable people. Nothing today is more serious, and nothing is receiving more serious scrutiny." Syria's government and Syria itself has never been a safe place for citizens. It has always been dangerous for the civilians because the government is relentless in that they will do anything it takes in order to keep the citizens in their place. Syria has a history of not paying any attention to civil human rights. In the year 2000, Bashar al-Assad became Syria's new president after his father, who had previously occupied that position, died. In the beginning of his leadership, the country has undergone some degree of relaxation, with many political prisoners being released. But according to a human rights group, there are still 800 political prisoners in Syrian custody. But the pace of change has dramatically decreased, if not reversed. Assad has made it very clear that his focus is completely on economic reform rather than political. Many critics say that the president doesn't quite understand the extent of international disapproval of the Syrian government. Since the year 2000, Assad has allowed political prisoners to go free, and he has allowed independent newspapers to be published. Although Bashar al-Assad has made some improvements, he recently shot down about a couple thousand peaceful protesters. His main focus is his economy rather than his people. As president, he should be enforcing or making laws that protect the citizens of Syria. Instead, he seems to be promoting violence towards them. In places that are more advanced than Syria when it comes to human rights, there is a government that appreciates and cares for their citizens. In countries such as the United States, executions by the government, arbitrary arrests, so on and so forth, are prohibited with no questions asked. The government makes sure that the citizens are able to live in safety and freedom without fear. In the US, there is no torture while in custody. There are no disappearances. The same cannot be said for Syria. If the Syrian government had stricter laws regarding the treatment of their people, there would be much less unlawful activity. If Syria could take the government of the United States, one that cares for citizens and enforces laws when need be, then the country could potentially stop their struggle with human rights. Many organizations around the world are trying to improve the lives of the Syrian citizens. There are many independent organizations like the Human Rights Watch that posts articles and spreads awareness and provides news and analysis from a human rights point of view. The United Nations has also been doing their best to stop the horrible illegal action that have been taking place in Syria. Right now, the problems in Syria have become known internationally, and everyone is doing their best to stop the atrocities that are taking place. One of the many improvements that Syria could make is being more transparent. Transparency meaning that everybody should be made aware of things that are smaller than gas attacks on thousands. A single individual's life being taken is just as significant. If Syria were more transparent, they would receive even more disapproval from other countries, and eventually they might even realize that there are better ways to solve their problems than killing. That's my suggestion. It's really sad. The second improvement is accountability. The government must hold the law enforcement accountable to their crimes, but there is a problem with that. The government itself is all too aware of what is happening, and are either in on the crime or they turn a blind eye. For example, if an officer kills or tortures or arrests someone arbitrarily, that officer should be arrested or at least held responsible for their crimes. If this rule were enforced, there would be less violations of the right, and the citizens would have a chance to live more normal lives. The third improvement is the government actually enforcing their laws and human rights. Right now, the government is allowing, tolerating, and sometimes orchestrating things that shouldn't be accepted or done anywhere, such as torture or executions. If the government itself began strictly enforcing the laws, even the simplest of them, it could mean huge improvements for the country, and it would allow many citizens to live in peace and safety without the dark cloud of a potential death hanging right over their heads. What are you doing? Syria has quite a long way to go until it reaches a point where the right to life is prominent and being enforced. The whole system is flawed. The government, the criminal justice system. Change is needed now, and change is long overdue.